on Tuesday, December 22nd, you are going to be giving out the Democracy in Action Awards as part of the USC Schwarzenegger Institute. You're giving it out to 5 people. 2 of the recipients are people the American people know very well. Chris Krebs, the former cybersecurity head for the United States, who was fired by President Trump, and also the Georgia Secretary of State, Mr. Raffensperger. Why was it so important for you to give awards to those 2 people in particular?
Well, I think that there were a lot of courageous people during this last election. And I think that they stood up for democracy. They defended the voters rather than to do something what the party wanted them to do. They worked under severe circumstances, under death threats from people because they refused to cheat. And so I got really involved in this whole thing by just, committing money and investing money in polling places, because I'm very much aware of the voter suppression that's going on, and also how many polling places have been closed maybe for other reasons, if it's the coronavirus or budgetary reasons or whatever people claim it is. We just wanted to come in and give money to open up polling places so everyone has a right to vote and to create a certain kind of equality when it comes to voting. And those are people that worked very hard to make sure that the votes come in, that every vote is counted, and a certain honesty and a good process there, that there's no cheating going on in all this. So now, of course, they have been threatened, and there's death threats. A lot of those people that have worked and have stood up for the rights. Like, for instance, the Raffensperger, who stood up, is a Republican, and he was told by Trump that he should cheat, basically. And I think that for him to say, no, we're going to go and stick with the law. This is what the count is. We're going to do a recount. So you have the legal right to have a recount, but this is what it is. And we're not going to cheat at all. We're going to stay exactly what it is. And so I think there's a very courageous thing. So there's tremendous courage there that people have shown. Or for instance, Chris Krebs, for instance, that was put in charge by Trump to oversee our election process, and if there's any outside interference, if there's any hacking going on, or any cheating going on, or any of those kind of things. And he came out after the election and says, well, there was no interruption, no outside interference or anything like this. And then he was immediately fired by Trump because he was honest. And since then, he has been getting death threats. So this is why I think that people like that should be rewarded, that there should be the spotlight put on them. And to just say thank you for fighting for democracy and being democracy action heroes. And as I explained to them, that I play the action hero in the movies, but you guys are true action heroes.
So you made a point of pointing out that the Georgia Secretary of State, Mr. Raffensperger, is a Republican, which reminded me to ask you, are you still a Republican?
Yes, I'm a Republican. Absolutely. I'm a Republican, one of the traditional Republicans that believe in the traditional principles of the Republican Party. It's sometimes confusing for people of what are the principles really are that the Republican Party stand for. Because in the old days, when I was a big fan of the Republican Party, they talked about, being fiscally responsible, for instance. Well, look at what has happened since Trump became president of the United States. We went from a $20 trillion to $27 trillion debt. How do you call this fiscal responsibility? So the whole thing is turned upside down when they talk about individual rights and all of that stuff, and get government off your back, like Nixon talked about and Reagan talked about and all those and Bush talked about. Now you have government involved. If California wants to go and clean the air and reduce the greenhouse emissions, the greenhouse gases, and the carbon emissions, then the federal government comes in under the Trump administration and says, you can't do that. But those are kind of totally opposite of the Republican principles. So this is why I call myself a Republican, and they're banana Republicans.
Banana Republicans. So Governor Schwarzenegger, then, briefly, what happened to your party? Why do you think your party drifted so far away from the principles that you talked about, the principles that you championed when you were governor?
Well, I cannot tell you the answer of that. I just can only tell you that this last 6 weeks have been absolutely incredible to me, because here it is. I mean, the Republican Party all of a sudden stands for voter suppression. They stand for, doing gerrymandering, fixing the elections and all this kind of talking about conspiracies and stuff like that. And there was cheating going on. I said to myself, what is going on with this party? It's the same thing as if I go to a Mr. Universe contest in the old days and I lost the competition, and then I say, well, wait a minute, I think that Fidel Castro was involved in this and he helped them cheat. Or I would say maybe, the machines are broken, or there was no Austrian judge in the judging panel, or some crazy stuff like that. I would never do that. What I did was, when I lost the competition, I asked the judges, why did I lose? And they would say, Arnold, if you would be a little trimmer and the more muscular, more muscle separations, and if your posing improves, then you can win with this party. And that's exactly what I did. And a year later, I came back and I won. So you find out what is wrong, and the Republicans just have to realize that in California in 2007, I saw that how many women we lost in the Republican Party. And I told them at a speech that, you're dying at the box office, because women, rightfully so, they're fighting for environmental issues, healthcare issues, and education issues. And the Republicans are nowhere to be found on those issues. And so the same is going on now nationally. Who has left the Republican Party? Who went over to vote for Biden? It was young people and women. So this is exactly the same thing that's playing out. Whatever happens in California is happening nationwide.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.